topic, we are going to talk about IoT and AIoT, how buildings are becoming smarter. So let me introduce the speakers. They are all MPM members, and some of them are actually MPA committee member, have been putting a lot of efforts in the association. First, let me introduce Tharma. Tharma, he is recognized as a professional technologist in Malaysia Board of Technologies. He has 18 years of industrial experience in providing smart solutions and integrated infrastructures with hands-on knowledge above technologies for built environment. Next, we have Suhendra. He is the co-founder and CTO of Surftech, a fast-growing Malaysian-based Proptech startup. Surftech provides innovative digital platform for all parties engaged in facility management, ecosystem, and supply chain. Last but not least, we have Frank. We have the familiar face. Let me introduce him again. He is the founder and CEO of Properly Asia, which delivers top-notch tools and applications targeting property management, leasing and tenancy defect management, and effective communication. Yeah, I know the time is up. Let me pass the floor to you, Frank.
Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you. Wow, what an inspiring session just now, yeah? Between Asia and the US. Fantastic. Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Very welcome to this session. This is going to be fun because we're going to be talking a lot about technology. So if you are listening to this session in Zoom, and feel free to ask questions here in the Q&A, and we will try to jump into your questions straight away because we have some technology buffs on board, I can say, industry leaders. So I'm sure that they will be able to directly answer your questions. So like I said, we have two great people here in the room, completely different backgrounds, but they have definitely both working towards the same goals. One delivers the hardware, enables software to ensure that buildings come alive and can talk to its users in terms of data, talking to the systems. He's our IoT specialist. That's Mr. Tamar. Hey, Tamar, you changed your name. You got it later. You explain to me how do I pronounce that?
No, just call me Tamar.
Dharma. Okay, good. I think that's the easiest for us. Thank you so much. I still struggle. After all these years in Asia, I still struggle with Asian names. Thanks, Dharma. And the other person in the room, Suhendra, he builds software to manage buildings and mainly commercial buildings. And they manage the occupants and also the users. So like I said, very different backgrounds, but all aiming for the same. Now, the session is called IoT and AIoT, how buildings are becoming smarter. Let me quickly tell you what these abbreviations stand for. Now then our guests can actually explain in detail and from a technical perspective what it means. IoT, if you might be familiar with that term, stands for Internet of Things. These are all the connected devices to the internet. And then AIoT is a very new term, but it's becoming more and more a buzzword and very exciting actually. It's called artificial intelligence of things. So this is more about, so these guys will talk to us about the combination of that and how our cities and buildings are becoming smarter. So let me open the floor for you guys and let me fire a very first question at you. First of all, in our titles, it says how buildings are becoming smarter. So let's talk about smarter first, before we start talking about all the other technical side of things. So Tharma, what does smart mean to you?
Hey, very good morning to everyone. I think it's very important for us to dissect the title. Right? So I think that's the rule number one, so that we can get things right. The word smart itself is very subjective. I've been in industry doing smart services over the last 18 years. And until today, I still feel whatever we are doing is still not smart enough, right? So I started to provide solutions which were smart. Nowadays, I used to tell them they are getting smarter, right? But nobody knows when it will reach the peak of smartness. So to put things into perspective, the word smart, I think ideally best to be defined that when things around you learns your habit, right? Things around you should know what the users need. The user do not need to take his app, do not need to inform Alexa or Google, right? Wherever you are, it could be your home, if it's a smart home, it can be in your office. The cooling system should be able to adjust if there are 20 employees. If it's in a hotel, they should know how many guests are there in the room, right? To whether the light should be turned off, turned on, curtains, what need to be done. And if it's in the airport, what is the indoor air quality, right? I mean, I think basically the system, the objects around you, I think that's a key word. The objects around you has to know the subjects and then make the necessary adjustments of the parameters.
So in principle, you say the elements are connected to the users and to the operators of the building.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Hendra, thanks, Tharma, by the way. Great question. I mean, it's funny, you talk to so many people and everybody talks about smart cities, smart buildings, smart houses, smart everything, but what smart means to the one person is completely different from what the other person thinks about it. So Hendra, can we ask you, what do you feel smart means in terms of buildings?
First of all, good morning and thanks for having me here. It's good to see a lot of people here. Yeah, this is just my loose definition of what it means by smart things, right? To me, smart is where the devices or your environments actually knows how to tune themselves before you are doing something, or at least with the human doing at least things possible, but everything is supposed to be running according to what the occupants or the humans are liking. Yeah, so to me, that's the definition. So almost ideally, as Tharma said just now, without even giving instructions, then everything turned into what is the ideal situation or environment to us. That is, I think, the end goal of smart.
Okay, cool. That's you see, the two people had two different definitions. Fantastic. Okay, so let's dive into these other two abbreviations in our title of this this session. So I'm going to talk to Tharma about IoT, and then we use Suhendra for artificial intelligence of things. So as Tharma, you have been in the IoT industry before even anybody has heard of IoT would knew what it would stand for, right? Internet of Things, such a wide subject. I saw the first Internet of Things before the internet, well, not before the internet existed, but I saw the first terms of this in 1972 by a company in the Netherlands called Philips. They had a research center, and I actually there already saw the home of the future. So, and that's nearly 50 years ago now. That's amazing. So can you tell us a little bit more what exactly you do? And maybe also, can you explain us a little bit more on how you got involved in this industry and what interested you so much on this Internet of Things? And maybe, yeah, then later we will talk a little bit more about the future.
Yeah, sure. Let me first, I think, address your earlier question about IoT first. I mean, a bit of how this, I mean, in my own opinion, I think you have put it very well. I've been in industry even before the word IoT existed, right? So before the era of, for I think generally for technologies, the word IoT itself is a marketing word, right? To create more awareness to people, right? Before even IoT, they were known as machine-to-machine, SCADA system, PLC solutions, and all that. But with the rapid evolution of how the smartphones, app marketplaces, cloud computing, and that's how the word IoT itself have actually grown exponentially. Apart from IoT, which is actually Internet of Things, and now we have AIoT. We also, another new acronym is MIoT, which actually stands for Medical Internet of Things, right? So coincidentally, I was with a hospital client, and they are already asking everyone, what is your opinion on what MIoT, right? So I'm not so sure, and probably in years to come, we may even have a PIoT, PropTech IoT, who knows, right? So you will never know that. So, well, the fundamental, and in fact, one of the first IoT mission globally, I think you have put it right. I think they've been in existence since 1970s. In fact, many of us don't even realize the first IoT missions around us is actually an ATM mission, automated teller missions. They were the first machines that were connected to banking system in real time, right? Wherever you are, remotely, you can always access your cash, and your bank balances and everything are connected. So they were the first IoT machines globally. And of course, with the rapid evolutions, we already start having consumer IoT devices, industrial IoT devices, and then we have enterprise-grade IoT devices. And myself, we are providing IoT end-to-end solution. Fundamentally, the challenge about IoT is that though we are in year 2022, it is hugely fragmented. There are various protocol, wireless standards, alliances, companies that come out with certain standards, and all these subsystems do not talk to each other. Or in rather proper technical word, there is no interoperability. And when there is no interoperability, there is no data. And when there's no data, there's no AI.
Correct.
Right. So the fundamental, or rather the prerequisite, is that to have interoperability, and that is the biggest pain point in the market, and that's where exactly we are addressing them by having our very own in-house solution known as B-Wave.
Right.
It is an agnostic platform that talks to IoT sensors and devices from various brands, various origin, with top-notch cybersecurity solution, and basically to allow enterprises to jumpstart the IoT journey.
Right. So just to simplify a little bit on what you just said, in principle, IoT really came to life when it became connected to the internet, because before it was all wired connections, right? So now, because of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity, it's easy to put these sensors everywhere. And what you're saying is the collection of data is the most important part of the IoT outcome, actually, because in principle, we create this IoT network of sensors and other apparatus around the building, just to make sure that we can do something with it and can make sure that the building gets healthier and that the people in using the building gets healthier. So, Hendra, just to talk to you about AIoT. Now, you guys mainly manage, from what I understand, commercial buildings in and around Asia. How do you use AIoT within these buildings, and what are the benefits of the actual end user? Tell us also a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the industry. Maybe we can start with that first.
All right, thanks. Yeah, AIoT, again, this is maybe you can call it a buzzword or a new terms that just came into the market quite recently. Of course, historically, we talk about the IoT devices that actually start much earlier, as Tharma mentioned just now, even before it's actually called IoT. There are things that actually already in place in terms of the building operations, in terms of sensors. They're all connected to, I think in the olden days, or even until today, it's still connected to something called a building management system or building automation system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where it goes from IoT to AIoT, this is more of like an evolution, whereby in the olden days, everything just about getting the data, just getting the readings of temperatures, humidity, electrics, on all that. It's just the data, and this is something that is not so useful actually for us as a human, because we tend to work with language, right? Not with numbers. And when we just get flooded with just the numbers, and I think that is the part that we cannot make full use of the IoT. And that is where AIoT actually comes into the picture, whereby now it's not just about data, it's not just about the numbers, but it gives us a meaningful insights of what's actually happening in our environment or in our building, right? So with this AIoT, we can get more meaningful data and insights, and it also able to make autonomous decisions without or with minimal human interventions. Yeah.
Great.
So,
great. Yep. Go
this
ahead.
is where it becomes very useful these days because the AIoT, of course, it has autonomous decisions making capability at the device level or at the server side level. So it can be done in both. So we look at, for example, like automation on lighting, on blinds or windows opening, or HVAC system, right? It can be done in terms of the parameter tunings or predicting device failures, and all that is with the help of the AI that is now embedded inside the AIoT. Yeah. So just a little bit of ourselves. We actually started to jump into this PropTech like a couple of years ago, whereby we see the needs that people start talking about the smart building, start embedding their sensors into their building. And also we see the gaps whereby if those devices just keep on sending information, but when humans start interacting with those numbers, with those data, and they also still need to do like day-to-day inspection or workflow or repair and maintenance, we see the gap whereby there is no seamless integration between IoT devices and their existing process. And that is where we as a ServDeck come into the picture, and we provide the full end-to-end solutions whereby you can interact seamlessly, effortlessly with IoT devices to make the building smarter.
Okay, great. Just a quick recap on what you just said, because there's also a lot of information in there. So in principle, once you get the data from the IoT devices, it then goes into your system and you're able to analyze the data. That's one. And then you let the system also take decisions for you, either for the building or for the users of the building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, Tarma, just now when we spoke about IoT, in the old days, every sensor required a cable, a very, very long cable, because that had to go to some control room and probably through some walls, and some hacking needed to be done, and all of that is no longer needed. But I'm very sure that there are still challenges of the actual implementation of IoT within a building. Now, let's separate two things. Of course, there are new buildings where this whole IoT part and AIoT part is already pre-planned, but I'm sure that there is also challenges in old buildings. So let's talk about the new buildings first. What are your challenges by implementing IoT and IoT devices in new buildings?
I think the main challenge is the awareness, right? So when you talk about new building, I think everyone knows about what is IoT. Now more people getting to know what is AIoT. People is aware what is 5G is capable of doing, connectivity. I think it's all on the very high level, right? Even let's talk about new buildings, and who are the stakeholders involved in new buildings? The planners, the designers, M&E consultants, the property developers themselves, the architects.
And architects,
right?
Yeah.
So typically, let's take example, you're going to build a condominium, right? So with 500 units, you have a retail podium, or you're going to have a commercial towers, hybrid buildings with hotels and so on in an urban township area. And they have this wish list to call it a smart building or smart homes or smart hotels or whatever you have. But fundamentally, the prerequisites of all these elements that has to be in place are often overlooked, right? For example, we know that it all wirelessly can be done, like what Frank, you have just mentioned, which is very true. But most of these sensors, the gateways, still require power supplies, right? Not all of them operate with batteries. And when we are talking about low carbon footprint, SDG 2030, we should not be installing thousands of devices with batteries. And end of the day, you have to go around the building and changing 1,000 over sensors with batteries. Exactly. and dumping them right back to the environment. That should not be happening as well. So in most cases, what we feel that is actually happening, even for new buildings, unfortunately, they always think that all these connected services can be implemented at the later stage. The priorities are not given at the development or designing stage. But those are actually changing, whereby that when the clients learn it at the hard way, and then they start communicating with the clients, the consultants, so that they will be start incorporating it. I think COVID have accelerated this, and everyone understands future-proofing buildings are the most important thing, important aspects. So that's basically on the newer buildings.
Yes, it's actually, you mentioned something very interesting, because somehow it's overlooked. And interesting enough, in many buildings, specifically the new buildings, the facility management company or the facility manager only comes in once the building is about to open, when it's already constructed. Where actually, because these are the best consultants you have, because they work in these buildings and they understand buildings from a practical point of view, they should be part of the process of the actual construction and planning process. And then it becomes much more easier, and then these things would not be overlooked. So hopefully we can help them a little bit in the future with this kind of processes. So Hendra, can you tell me a little bit, because I'm sure that some of the commercial buildings that you handle are also older buildings. What are your challenges in implementing AIoT in the older buildings?
Yeah, what we have seen so far is that there are two extremes, basically. There is one part, or there's one side that actually jumped too quick. Like they just heard about this IoT thing, and then, okay, let's just allocate some money and just do it, right? Without knowing like what is the benefit, what is the challenges, what is the long-term goals of implementing this. So that's one extreme. On another extreme, there are people who are too afraid or like scared and just wait and see, and I don't know, God knows how long, right? They just want to see what other people are doing, and themselves are just not doing anything. So these are, I think, the challenges. And as you guys just now point out that awareness, I think, is quite important, and also the willingness of this building owners or building operators to actually talk to the experts. And in Malaysia, we have a lot. I mean, of course, like you guys, Tharma here especially is the expert in this area, definitely. And I believe they will be very happy to actually talk to people, to just assess the building, do the initial assessment, and consult and give advice on what is the actual needs, what's the actual goals that the building owners wants to achieve, and recommend the right solutions for them. Yeah, but
okay.
Sometimes people just too afraid, and I don't want to take risks, and let's see what other people are doing.
Yeah, I think yesterday that came in one of the sessions forward. It's like people are afraid because they don't know. So that's why I think the sessions that we're having here, these 2 days, we introduce smart tech and PropTech to people, so that people learn and understand a little bit more. So that's where we hopefully can help and then educate the masses a little bit. Okay, I'm sure that there is a user journey for smart buildings. So maybe, Tharma, could you explain us a little bit more on the actual user journey for smart buildings, and maybe some of the touch points that these users go through?
Yeah, sure. In fact, to answer that question, I think I have to even give put it in a context of smart building itself. When you say smart buildings, right, these buildings can be airports, can be schools, can be universities, can be hospitals, right, or can be commercial towers. And say, for example, it's a hotel, for example, in the hospitality industry. I think during the pandemic, the entire industry collapsed simply because there were too much of human interactions, right? So everything has to be contactless. So in talking about automated IoT-enabled smart building, in this particular example that I'm giving, such a smart hotel, everything can be contactless. That means the moment you arrive in KLIA, you basically get a Grab and go to the hotel. Your check-in process is actually through contactless, through a self-check-in kiosk. You basically go to your room. It is actually a BLE-enabled door lock, right? And then you just access into your room. You actually have your concierge robots, and the room basically knows how many guests are there in the particular room, right? And it actually adjusts the cooling system. Instead of being 16 degrees at full fan speed, it can actually gradually increase it, the temperature, and decrease the fan speed without even the guest realizing it. I think most important thing here is that the guest is comfortable, right? In fact, when we do it manually via the thermostat, we wouldn't know what temperature and what fan speed will be the most comfortable for us. But a system, right? A smart system will be able to know whether it's a summer, whether it's a monsoon season, and where it's going to be raining at the 3 or 4 hours today in KL, for example. It will be actually able to know. It will be able to know the indoor air quality so that the guests will not complain to the general manager or the front desk, right? I think these are very little things that makes the entire journey seamless and the various touch points when a user arrives in any buildings. And similar approaches can also happen in a hospital, for example. When someone goes into the hospital, go and get actually admitted, and while they are staying over there for, let's say, for a couple of days, right? Why should they keep contacting the nurses for little things? If, let's say, I feel very depressed, right? I'm alone in the room, I would like to control my ambience. I can actually do it from my mobile phone, right? And when I'm away from the bed, I'm into the toilet, the caregivers and the nurses can always monitor my well-being instead of them manually running into the room each time a nose call button is pressed. As we have aging society, there are many, in fact, a lot of property developers that we are actually working with are actually converting residential property into senior care livings, assisted living, wellness resorts. And how are you going to manage these occupants if they're going to be in a high-rise building from a centralized location, right? So I think fundamentally the important aspects are two. One is the occupant in this case can be guests, patients, or employees' experience, right? And number two is that how optimally the management can actually manage this, right? It could be for their ESG goals, or it could be for them to minimize their monthly overhead in terms of just a cooling system cost. Let's don't talk about all kind of nice to have stuff. Let's just focus into the must have stuff. Get started with something.
Right. Well, I mean, if you talk about ESG and SDGs, that came out of one of the sessions that I was in yesterday as well. Matthias Gelber from Germany, he mentioned that. He said, you want to do something now, you cut your electricity cost. And then, of course, your cooling systems, your heating systems, your freezing systems, all of that runs on water pumps and electrical motors. So if you can make some savings there, then immediately that's good for your carbon footprint. So guys, we have a whole bunch of questions. I think we can talk for another 2 hours, but we also have some guests in the room that would like to hear from you as well. One of our guests just wrote a question. How would blockchain impact the incorporate IoT or incorporate IoT and AIoT? Who would like to answer that, or maybe both? Suhendra first. So how would blockchain help you and impact and incorporate into IoT and AIoT?
Interesting question. I think we see more and more of the collaborations between different types of technologies now being applied to the actual usage in the market. So from what we see here is that the data that's actually coming from AIoT and IoT in general, of course, it needs to be stored somewhere. And then if under certain circumstances, for example, there's any failure and that actually impacts, for example, SLA or any agreement or contracts with another party, for example, between the building owner and also the building operators. And that is where blockchain actually can help in terms of storing this data and then avoiding anyone from tampering the data that actually generated by the sensors or by IoT. And hence, everyone actually has a common ground to see what is the actual situations actually happening in the building, and there is no more arguments between parties because everything is stored in a blockchain that is not modifiable by anyone. I think that is probably just one of the use case I think that we can see from how to incorporate both IoT as well as the blockchain.
Okay, thank you so much, Suhendra. Tamar, you want to add to this?
Yeah, sure. I think fundamentally, one of the challenge about IoT adoption is the cybersecurity aspect. Consumers tend to believe or perceive that, or there is no assurance that the cybersecurity that is being implemented is secure enough. But when IoT comes together, but blockchain has been well accepted globally that it's actually hack-proof,
Yep.
right? It is
Yes.
actually hack-proof. That when you say it's now blockchain and IoT comes together, I believe the consumers will believe that, okay, now it is actually hack-proof, right? Though if we're going to keep explaining to them, no, we have a banking grade or we have a military grade cybersecurity, I think it'll be process of convincing them will take longer compared to when you have incorporated blockchain together with your IoT implementation. I think the convincing part will become easy.
Yeah, I think also it takes some time for the mass public, I would say, to adopt to blockchain. You know, also because some of the news that came out lately and all this, you know, it's all not good for the industry. But I agree with you, Tama. There is no system at this moment that works so independently and is so safe and secure as the blockchain technology. I mean, once you fully understand how it works, then there is we could probably fill another 2 hours just talking about this. Okay, let's move on to the next question. It's not so much a question, but let's see if we can turn it into a question. PropTechs are important in the planning stage, and hopefully this can be improved. So that's good. I like it that somebody says PropTechs need to get involved in the planning stage, because often, you know, we can get involved somewhere at the end. Nowadays, the construction stages, the project director in charge should be far-sighted and tech-savvy. That is absolutely true. But half of them sitting in the top management may not be willing to change and throw it to the owners of the building to upgrade and more money to be flocked out, more or less. For infra instead of having done it earlier. So in principle, I can understand what the question is. In principle, if we plan the PropTech part of a building, of a smart building, because in the end, if we use PropTech, the building becomes automatically smarter. If we plan it earlier, probably the money invested is less. What would you say to that, Tama?
Yeah, that is of course absolutely true. I think there are two issues here in the context of Malaysia. Right? Who is the owner of the building eventually? When you talk about residential building, it's tricky because you have the management, certain part of the common spaces and everything falls under the management, and they have to manage these technologies. No, technology implementation requires support, requires maintenance. And when we talk about maintenance, you require costs. What is the lifespan of whatever things that you're going to put into the spaces? And are there universal framework, or they are proprietary systems? And what happens if the vendor that supply proprietary systems are no longer around, right? So these are fundamental things that is actually affecting. But when you talk about commercial buildings, I think they're not really a big issue because it's all being managed by a single entity. But what really lacks is that at times, it is not really the owners of the project, in this case, the property developers themselves, because property developers themselves are decision makers, right? And they actually rely on consultants. And consultants have been in existence for many, many years. Architects being the senior most consultant who actually have a final say in any particular projects, and then being supported by various other consultants. But if we realize whatever that we are talking about today is all about electronics, computing, telecommunications, right? We're talking about connectivity, 5G, blah, 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 cybersecurity and all that. And the nearest consultant that have in any buildings are M&E. And M&E consultants are mechanical and electrical consultants. Electrical and electronics are two different animals, right? So we actually can't expect M&E consultant, though they may be aware, to provide the best comprehensive roadmap or solution for a building. So what I'm saying here is that there is a gap in the industry itself, the real estate industry itself. It is a right time to start having electronics, technology, connectivity, telecommunication related consultants as part of any projects, right? It should be, I
Yep,
believe. I believe
fully,
it should be.
fully, yes,
Yeah,
I fully agree.
I think that's where MPA is in place,
Yes.
right, to address the gap by actually providing solutions and services by various members, right, and even play an advisory role so that the clients in the ecosystem make the right choices.
Right. Yeah, it's also sometimes something that I say to some of my potential clients is like, don't buy from me yet. Let me just inform you. You know, just let me educate you a little bit for half an hour, 45 minutes. Then you take your decision. So, Suhendra, for you, what do you feel on this subject?
Yeah, I think it's actually we see more and more awareness, definitely. And actually, I kind of like link that to the next question that I can see here is that how ready actually that Malaysians in general for adoption of the smart buildings. So, I mean, if you don't mind, maybe I can just answer
please
both
do.
at the
Yeah.
same time.
So the question is, do you think Malaysians? This is asked by Praven or PR Raven. Do you think Malaysians are ready to adopt to smart buildings? What would you say to that, Surendra?
Yeah, definitely we see a more higher rate of awareness now, and more people talk about it, not just talk about it, and they take steps forward to start talking to consultants or even going to for the implementation, which is really all a good things. And we can see why, for example, like as just now you rightly point out that energy saving is definitely a no-brainer for the building owners to take up in this journey because it's business driven, right? Whenever there is a technology that helps the building owner to save the electricity bills, basically, and at the same time achieving their SDG goals in terms of reducing carbon emission, that is the major driver actually for the adoption. So yes, I think it's just about the right time that actually people now start implementing this. And from what we see so far is that I think collaborations between parties is really critical to make this one as a success. Right. And as we always talk about in MPA, there are so many parties, not only in MPA, but also of course throughout the nation. There are many experts, there are many companies that are actually more than capable. But sometimes, for example, one company, again, I'm just quoting Tharma, expert in the devices on IoT devices itself. Like for us as Transact, we are actually more into the facility management and collaboration systems that actually facilitate the communication to the tenants, even to the building owners and to the tenants. So we cannot work just one party alone, I believe, and this is where I think collaboration between parties is really important to make this adoption even faster.
Yes, if I want to add something to that, I think at this moment it would be the users demanding now from building owners that they would like to get connected to their buildings, or even people working in the building, so maintenance crews tell their bosses, boss, why are we still having paper forms? Why is all our reporting still done on pen, paper, and Excel spreadsheets? We all have mobile devices in our pockets. Can we not use them? So slowly this transition is happening. So I think that's what really will speed up these processes. And then of course with faster networks coming to Malaysia or to Asia in general, definitely it only can speed up for the next 5 to 10 years. So yeah, thank you very much for your answer, Suhendra. Okay, I think we have probably time for one more question. We have another 4 minutes on the session. Would smart cities data be safe in the blockchain, especially in transit when servers talk to each other and using API? Tharma?
No, I think well, it's a very open question actually, because end of the day it depends who going to manage this data of a smart city, right? A city definitely is owned by a local council, right? And it has to fall within the local council's policy. And what we are seeing in the market nowadays, not necessarily everything has to go to the cloud, right? If it can process at the edge, right? I mean, that's where edge processing comes in, right? It can be processed on-premise. The data can be stored on-premise. But for intelligence and decision-making, a certain amount of data can actually go to the cloud. But in terms of the ownership of the data, and of course with the blockchain and other necessary tools that you can put in place, I think we have to see the entire thing as a supply chain, right? Smart city is going to be the end product that will actually enjoy by the citizen, right? And you actually have plenty of technology providers at the back, and all this data is going to be shared among them. And we can always categorize them, which data need to be shared and which data basically need to remain on site actually.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We are at the end of our session and we're preparing for the next one that's coming. So I would like to thank you very much, Tama and Suhendra, for participating in this session and sharing all your knowledge. Thanks for all the guests here and all the fantastic questions that you asked. And I look forward to seeing all of you soon. Take care for now.